And one more point on all those polls. Even though Democrats' numbers are low, when you ask people, who do you prefer, a Democratic senator or a Republican senator? We did it in the 6 battleground states, which were +2, +3 overall. So it's not a Democratic or independent survey. 47-39, they prefer Democrats. And in a couple of the races where we have the 2 candidates, we win.
Do you? Do you really? Because according to the polling, Democrats are in a lot of trouble, and I mean a lot of trouble. Now, Republicans are losing some favorability. You're seeing a dip in the polling, but once you put Democrats up against Republicans on specific issues, the Republican Party is enjoying a pretty significant lead, and that is according to the latest. There are multiple polls, but the latest one is from Reuters and Ipsos, and here is what the findings indicate. The public trusts Republicans' plan to address crime to the Democrats by 20 points, 40% to 20%. I'm gonna just pause to maybe discuss this a little more. There was a person in the media, if I recall, someone who was a Democrat her entire life, registered Democrat her entire life, who saw this coming from a mile away, who talked about how crime in the big cities was going to make people turn away from the Democrats and no longer trust them in the handling of crime issues. And that person was smeared pretty viciously.
Yeah.
That person was me. And I would just like to ask all those people who engaged in those smear tactics, do you feel good about where the Democratic Party is on this issue today? Do you think that the average American voter is just stupid and imagined crime and is basing their opinion on this on hallucinations? Or could it be that there were actually real problems that weren't being addressed by the Democrats? People were being gaslit by the Democrats on those issues, and as a result, people are going to trust the Republican solutions way more than the lack of solutions from the Democrats. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so we on this show said for about 20 years straight, for God's sake, there's 2 different issues here that I want to address. For God's sake, to pass popular bills, do something, right? And every time the Democrats said, oh, no, there's nothing we could do. Nothing we could do, nothing we do. Filibuster, parliamentarian. No, paid family leaves at 84%, I'm not gonna pass it. I don't know how to pass a bill that's at 84% because I'm a moron, I'm totally ineffective. No, they sold out to the donor class and they purposely didn't do anything. We oftentimes screamed at the top of our lungs, no, do your actual agenda. Why am I still on the left? Why do I still support some small number of Democrats? Because their agenda, their policy, paid family leave, higher minimum wage, lower drug prices, etc., is a good policy. That's not the problem. The problem is Democratic politicians who are liars and don't believe in that policy. And if you gave them 200 years, they still wouldn't pass it. And if you gave them 80 senators, they'd say like, well, no, they get money from big pharma. They're enormously corrupt. Chuck Schumer is totally, utterly corrupt. He's the guy who purposely didn't pass any of those bills because he works for the donors. Then on crime, we told you guys, stop insulting Americans by saying you're hallucinating. Crime isn't real. I'm a liberal and I'm rich and white and I will speak for black and brown communities. And you people are complaining for no reason. Then Oakland's like, I get rid of this progressive mayor because we are perceiving her to be driving up crime, right?
The mayor, the district attorneys, over 70% of Californians voted in favor of something known as Proposition 36, which reversed some of the criminal justice reform that had taken place in California. And by the way, look, the crime issue really is a state and local issue, okay? So when you talk about crime, the messaging on a federal level was a problem, but the action on a local level was a bigger problem, right? So the gaslighting took place for sure. But what was so frustrating about that was that they just wouldn't take any ownership that, hey, some of the things that we tried out aren't working. Doesn't mean that you go back to the policies that just threw everyone in prison, but what can we do to tinker with this policy, recalibrate this policy so it actually leads to the type of reform and the type of positive change people need? Yeah. And by the way, in terms of Prop 36, Gavin Newsom refuses to fund it. The Democratic state legislature in the state of California refuses to fund it.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to the answer that you asked earlier, Anna. So are they going to change? Look, I'm a progressive, but at no point did we ask on this show, or did I see any other actual progressives going and saying, hey, you know what? We just like to get rid of cops. Or it's no, we said cops are abusing minorities and we want them retrained so they don't abuse people and they don't shoot quickly. There's hundreds of our videos where we say that super clearly, and never do we say, let's take cops away.
I wanted deep reforms in the prison system, so they're not torture chambers, and actually help to rehabilitate people so when they leave, they're able to be productive, healthy, happy members of society. We didn't do any of that.
So instead, a bunch of yahoos online were like, no, we're gonna call all the voters stupid and say there is no crime. You idiots are imagining it, okay? The idiots in Oakland, the black people and the brown people, they don't know anything. I'm a white liberal and I speak for them. You should know your role. We're releasing the criminals. God damn it, what are you doing?
So it worked out really well.
You cost us 20 points on that. And now nobody can get elected because you were so immovable. So Anna, to answer your question, are they gonna look at these numbers and move? No, they're not gonna. The radical left is not gonna move an inch on this. They're gonna be like, no, I'm smarter than everyone. There's no crime, there's never been any crime. I'm just gonna yell and scold the American people. Thanks a lot for losing all of the goddamn elections for us.
All right, let's get to some other issues here. Crime was just one of them, but there are several other issues where the majority of Americans trust Republicans over Democrats. So the public trusts Republicans plan to address immigration by 18 points. So they're enjoying 40%, Democrats 22%. On foreign policy conflicts by 12 points, which is so depressing. Man. It's so depressing. But to be honest with you, both parties are really, really bad on foreign policy. So Republicans are enjoying 35%, Democrats 23%. On the economy by 10 points, Republicans at 34%, Democrats at 24%. And on gun control, which is amazing. They trust Republicans more than Democrats, 32% to 28%. And political extremism, 30% to 26%. So look, a lot of the political violence in the news lately obviously has been framed as left-wing violence against the right. So I'm sure that had some influence on the polling results on that. But the only issues that Democrats happen to beat Republicans on are in regard to the environment. So Democrats are at 37%, Republicans are at 23%. Women's rights, Democrats are at 38%, Republicans 25%. Healthcare, which to be quite honest with you, the Democrats should have leaned into heavily in the last election cycle, but I don't recall it being addressed at all by the Harris campaign, by anyone really. The last election cycle really had nothing to do with reforming our healthcare system, and that's what they care about deeply. That's what voters care about deeply. And then finally, most voters trust Democrats over Republicans when it comes to democracy or respect for democracy, 31% to 29%.
Yeah, these numbers are an epic disaster. You just go down the list. Why don't Americans trust Democrats more on foreign policy? They should. Theoretically, right? Because we have theoretically the better policies, but do we? Because our politicians don't agree with us. Here's a great example. On should we support Israel in what they're doing in Gaza? Democratic voters are right. It's 92-8, and it's not close. I mean, that is as big a difference as you'll ever see. 92-8. They say no, don't support Israel. The politicians, Democratic politicians go, no, I'm gonna betray you voters, I'm gonna betray the progressives, and I'm gonna do the opposite. 92% of us are gonna say, attaboy Israel, here's 7 billion more, here's 6 billion more, whatever you need, blank check. Well, then American people hate that policy. Independents hate that policy, now the right wing hates that policy. But Democratic politicians in their infinite stupidity and corruption go, no, I'm gonna double down on being wrong. I mean, it's the easiest win in the world. Have the Democratic Party serve 92% of its voters and start winning elections by saying, no, American sovereignty, we're not going to accept Israel committing this genocide with our money. No, they won't do it. Why are they so unpopular? because it's so obvious how corrupt they are. You go down the list, the economy. Why didn't you do a higher minimum wage? Why didn't you, instead of trying to lower drug prices on one drug, why didn't you do it for 10,000? The American people would have loved you. They would have loved you. They hate that policy. Again, and the Democratic policy is to lower drug prices through negotiation of Medicare. That's a great policy. About 90% of the country agrees. Did they do it? No, never. Never. Why? Because they take money from Big Pharma. So my whole life, I've been trying to explain to Democratic voters, your politicians are not angels. They're betraying you more than almost anyone else is. You need to get new politicians that actually represent those issues, and we'll fight for them and we'll pass them. And what did we get back in return? All of mainstream media saying, oh, you're helping Trump. How dare you criticize Democrats? You should bow your head to Democrats. And you should all pretend that there's no crime and the Democrats are such a great party and that they're awesome on foreign policy. And shh, don't say anything about Israel at the convention. You'll be booted out of the convention if you say something about Israel. You all have to bow your heads to these incompetent, corrupt fools. And what did that get us? In the midst of the darkest times brought to you by Donald Trump, they're still getting their asses handed to them by Trump. They lost to him twice, and now they're getting humiliated in the middle of him doing terrible. No, get rid of them all. You should, as a blanket rule, you should vote against Democratic incumbents in Democratic primaries, unless they could prove it to you, like Ro Khanna and some others, that they actually fight for you and they make a difference. Otherwise, if you see a Democratic incumbent and you're a Democratic voter, go to the primary and make sure you vote against them, because they're the incompetent fools who buried the party that you love and the policies that you love. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.